Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defender and watched the screen's show numbers that made his stomach feel heavy. The alien ships had been spotted 3 days ago, coming through space like they owned everything they could see. The reports from intelligence made things look very bad. The Zephyrians had bigger ships, better weapons, and they had already taken over 17 different worlds without breaking a sweat, Lieutenant. Amy Carter walked up to Jake with a data pad in her hands. Her face looked worried as she spoke. "Sir, their fleet has 4 times more ships than we do. Each of their ships is bigger than our largest battleship. Their weapons shoot plasma that can reach twice as far as our missiles can fly." Jake nodded but said nothing. He had read the same reports. The Zephyrians had sent Earth a simple message: surrender in 72 hours or watch every human city burn. This was how they always did things. They would show up with massive fleets and give the target planet one chance to give up without a fight. Most planets took that chance because fighting meant dying. The thing was, the Zephyrians had never fought humans before. They studied every species they planned to conquer. They knew how other aliens thought and fought, but humans were new to them. They had no idea what humans would do when someone pushed them into a corner with no way out. Admiral Don Phillips called an emergency meeting in the deep bunker under Colorado Springs. The room was filled with generals and admirals who looked like they had not slept in days. The air felt thick with worry and fear. Colonel Lisa Thompson stood at the front of the room with charts that showed just how bad things were. "We cannot win a normal space battle," Thompson said. "Their ships are too strong and too many. If we fight them the way they expect us to fight, we will all be dead in 6 hours. Admiral Phillips stood up and looked around the room. "The Zephyrians have studied 17 different species. They know how those species think. They know how those species fight. But they have never met humans before. They do not understand what we will do when someone tries to wipe us out." The meeting went on for hours. Officers talked about different plans, but none of them seemed good enough. Finally, Admiral Phillips made a decision that would change everything. "We are going to use Protocol 7. Most of the officers in the room had never heard of Protocol 7. It was something that existed only in the deepest classified files. Jake had heard whispers about it when he was a young officer, but he never thought it would actually be used. "Protocol 7 is not about winning this war," Phillips explained. "It is about making sure we can still fight the next one. The Zephyrians think they know what humans are capable of. They are wrong." When the meeting ended, Jake received encrypted orders on his personal communicator. As he read them, his hands started to shake. The orders were simple but terrible. Prepare his ship for something that no human military had ever attempted before. Back on his ship, Jake called his senior officers together. He could not tell them everything, but he could tell them enough. "We are going to fight these aliens, but not the way they expect. We are going to show them what humans do when someone tries to end our species." Lieutenant Carter looked confused. "Sir, what do you mean?" Jake looked at the faces of his crew. These were good people who had joined the military to protect Earth. Now they were about to be part of something that would change human history forever. The Zephyrians have conquered 17 worlds. They think they know how war works. They think they know how species react when facing extinction. They are about to learn that humans are different. The next day, strange things started happening all over Earth. Military bases that had been quiet for years suddenly came alive with activity. Scientists who worked on secret projects were moved to underground facilities. Equipment that had been stored in deep bunkers was brought out and prepared for use. Dr. Elena Ross had been working on a project that most people did not know existed. Her laboratory was buried deep underground in Nevada. She had spent 15 years working on something that could change the balance of power between humans and aliens. When she received the order to activate Protocol 7, she knew that her work would finally be used. General Paul Webb arrived at her facility with a team of military specialists. "How long do we have?" he asked. "The Zephyrian fleet is moving into attack position," Elena replied. "They will start shooting at our cities in 36 hours. My device is ready, but you need to understand what this means. Once we turn it on, there is no going back. The electromagnetic pulse will cover the entire planet. Every computer, every phone, every power grid will stop working. Webb nodded. Will it stop their ships? Their ships depend on computers just like ours do, maybe more than ours. But Paul, this will also destroy our civilization. Everything we have built will be gone. Better to lose our civilization than lose our species, Webb said. All over the world, other teams were preparing their own parts of Protocol 7. Major Kyle Barnes was giving special radios to resistance groups. These radios would work even after all the regular technology stopped functioning. Captain Susan Wright was preparing weapons that did not need computers to work. Old weapons that humans had used for hundreds of years before anyone invented electronics. The Zephyrians began their attack exactly when they said they would. Their plasma weapons destroyed Earth satellites in minutes. Their ships moved closer to the planet to begin destroying cities. They felt confident because this was how they always won their wars, but as their ships got closer, Elena Ross activated her device. The pulse was invisible and silent, but it was absolute. Every Zephyrian ship went dark at the same time. The aliens found themselves floating in space with no power, no weapons, and no way to contact each other. On Earth, the lights went out everywhere. But humans had been planning for this moment. They were ready to fight a war without electricity, without computers, and without any of the technology that made modern life possible. The Zephyrians were about to learn that humans did not just prepare for war. They prepared for the end of everything, and they were willing to pay that price to survive. The Zephyrian fleet hung in space like dead metal. Commander Vexta had conquered many worlds, but he had never faced anything like this. His ships were marvels of technology that could destroy planets, but now they were just floating chunks of metal. Every computer system was dead. Every weapon was offline. Every communication device was silent. Inside his command ship, Vexta tried to understand what had happened. His species had studied human technology for months before the invasion. They knew about human weapons, human ships, and human tactics. But they had never seen anything like this electromagnetic pulse that had killed every electronic device in the solar system. "Status report," he ordered his bridge crew, but the words came out as a whisper because the ship's air recycling system had stopped working. "All systems are down, Commander," his tactical officer replied. "Primary power is gone. Secondary power is gone. Even the emergency backup systems are not responding." Vexta felt something he had never experienced before during a conquest: fear. His ships were designed to fight other ships with energy weapons and missiles. They were not designed to function without power. His crew was trained to use advanced technology, not to survive in dead ships floating in space. On Earth, the situation was equally bad, but humans had planned for this. Cities went dark. Cars stopped working. Hospitals lost power. But in bunkers around the world, humans were already moving to the next phase of their plan. Major Pete Collins came out of his underground bunker and looked up at the night sky. He could see the alien ships hanging there like dark spots against the stars. They looked helpless, and that was exactly what Protocol 7 was designed to achieve. "Phase 2 is go," he spoke into his mechanical radio. These radios were built to work without any electronic parts. They were simple devices that could send messages even after every computer on Earth had died. Across the planet, hundreds of similar confirmations came through the old-fashioned radio network. Humans had spent decades preparing for this moment. They had built weapons that worked without electricity. They had trained soldiers to fight without computers. They had created supply chains that could function even after modern civilization collapsed. The second wave of Protocol 7 began with a sound that the Zephyrians had never heard before. It was the whistle of artillery shells flying through space. These were not smart missiles that needed computers to find their targets. These were simple projectiles fired from mechanical cannons that worked the same way cannons had worked for hundreds of years. The alien ships had energy shields that could stop laser beams and deflect plasma bolts. They had armor that could withstand nuclear explosions. But they had no defense against simple iron shells fired from guns that did not need electricity to work. Dr. Michelle Baker had spent years developing special chemicals that would make alien ships impossible to live in. As the shells hit the dead Zephyrian vessels, they released gas that would poison the air inside. The aliens would have to choose between staying in their ships and dying from the gas, or abandoning their ships and trying to survive in escape pods. The first escape pods started falling from the sky within hours. Captain Ron Peters led the ground teams that were waiting for them. The aliens climbed out of their pods expecting to fight humans with energy weapons and powered armor. Instead, they found themselves facing humans with crossbows, swords, and explosives that worked perfectly without any electronics. The Zephyrians had studied human military technology, but they had not studied human history. They did not know that humans had been killing each other very effectively for thousands of years before anyone invented computers. They did not understand that taking away human technology did not make humans helpless. It just made them angry. Lieutenant Colonel Alice Turner coordinated the hunt for alien survivors across North America. Her teams used horses to travel because cars no longer worked. They used radios that needed no batteries. They used weapons that had been stored in bunkers for decades. Waiting for the day when modern technology would fail, the Zephyrians who survived the crash landings found themselves in a world they did not understand. Earth's atmosphere was breathable for them, but it was harsh on their bodies. Without their environmental suits, they got sick quickly. Without their advanced medical equipment, they started dying from diseases that would have been easy to cure. On their homeworld, Dr. Frank Martinez led teams that captured alien soldiers for questioning. The information they gathered was not good news. Earth was not just facing one fleet. This was only the advance guard of a massive empire that controlled hundreds of worlds. The main Zephyrian fleet was already on its way and would arrive in a few months. "We need to make sure they never get the chance to try again," General Carl Jackson told his staff. They were meeting in a bunker that had been built during the Cold War. The room was lit by oil lamps because there was no electricity. The plan that emerged from that meeting was terrible in its simplicity. The electromagnetic pulse had knocked out human technology as well as alien technology. Earth could not rebuild its defenses before the main fleet arrived. The planet would be completely helpless when the real invasion began, but humans had one advantage that the Zephyrians did not expect. They had been preparing for total war for generations. They had weapons that were designed to work even after civilization ended. And they had people who were willing to use those weapons no matter what the cost. Commander Tracy Lewis was a former submarine captain who had volunteered for the most dangerous mission in human history. Using captured alien technology that had been hardened against electromagnetic pulses, human engineers were retrofitting an old weapon that had been built during the Cold War but never used. The antimatter device was small enough to fit in a briefcase, but it was powerful enough to destroy an entire fleet. The plan was simple and horrible. Use the captured alien ships to reach the main Zephyrian fleet when it arrived, then detonate the antimatter device at the heart of their formation. "Remember," Tracy told her volunteer crew, "we are not just fighting for Earth. We are fighting for every species that these aliens will try to conquer after us. We are going to teach them that some species are too dangerous to attack." As the weeks passed, more alien ships arrived to check on the first fleet. They found a planet that looked like it had gone back to the Stone Age. The Zephyrians thought this made humans easy to conquer. They did not realize that humans had chosen to give up their technology in order to destroy their enemies. The trap was set. The main fleet was coming. And humans were ready to show the galaxy what happened when someone tried to end their species. The main Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly when Earth's intelligence had predicted they would. Admiral Korthvel commanded over 300 ships, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. He looked down at the dark planet below and felt confident that this conquest would be easy. His advanced scouts had sent reports before their communications went silent. The humans had somehow disabled the first fleet with an electromagnetic weapon. But they had also destroyed their own civilization in the process. The planet was dark, no radio signals, no energy signatures. The humans had knocked themselves back to a primitive state just to stop one fleet. Foolish creatures, Korthvel said to his bridge crew. They have won one battle by destroying everything they built. Now they have no way to fight us. The admiral had studied the reports from the 17 worlds his empire had conquered. Species usually fought with everything they had, then surrendered when they realized they could not win. The humans had apparently chosen to destroy their own technology rather than surrender. It was an interesting tactic, but it would not work twice. Begin orbital bombardment of the major population centers, he ordered. We will eliminate their ability to resist, then land our forces to secure the planet. But as his ships moved into attack position, something unexpected happened. The first salvo of plasma beams fired from his fleet struck the planet's surface and created massive explosions. But instead of surrender broadcasts or pleas for mercy, the response was immediate and shocking. Artillery shells began flying up from the planet's surface. Not missiles guided by computers, but simple projectiles fired from mechanical cannons. The Zephyrians had shields that could stop energy weapons, but these old-fashioned shells punched right through them like they were made of paper. How is this possible? Korthvel demanded. Our intelligence said they had no functioning technology. His tactical officer was studying the sensor readings with confusion. Sir, these weapons appear to be chemical-based. Gunpowder and metal projectiles. Very primitive, but our shields are not designed to stop solid matter moving at high velocity. The shells were not just hitting random targets. They were aimed with deadly precision at the most vulnerable parts of the Zephyrian ships. Human observers had been watching the First Fleet for weeks, studying their designs, learning their weaknesses. Every shot was calculated to cause maximum damage. On the planet's surface, Captain Joe Brown was coordinating the ground-based artillery. His crews were using guns that had been built in secret facilities over the past 50 years. These weapons looked primitive, but they had been designed by humans who understood exactly what they would be fighting. Target the ship on the left flank, he called out. Armor-piercing rounds, high-explosive follow-up. The shells struck the alien vessel and punched through its hull. The explosions that followed were not just from the shells themselves, but from secondary explosions as the projectiles hit fuel lines and ammunition storage areas. The Zephyrians had built their ships to withstand energy weapons, but they had not considered that someone might attack them with solid metal, moving very fast. Tracy Lewis and her volunteer crew were watching the battle from their captured alien scout ship. They had spent months learning to operate the vessel, and now they were flying it toward the main fleet under the pretense of being a damaged ship returning from Earth. Remember the plan? Tracy told her crew. We get as close to the command ship as possible, then we activate the device. We have 5 minutes after activation to get into position. The antimatter device sat in the cargo hold of their ship. It was a weapon that had been designed during humanity's most dangerous period, when nuclear war seemed inevitable. The device was small, but it contained enough antimatter to destroy everything within a 50-kilometer radius. As their ship approached the Zephyrian fleet, Tracy could see the massive command vessel in the center of the formation. It was 3 kilometers long and bristling with weapons. Under normal circumstances, a small scout ship would never be able to get close to such a target, but these were not normal circumstances. The Zephyrians were dealing with an enemy that fought in ways they had never seen before. Their attention was focused on the planet below, where humans were firing projectiles that should not have been able to reach orbit. Unknown vessel, identify yourself, came a transmission from the command ship. Tracy activated the pre-recorded message they had prepared using a captured Zephyrian communicator. This is Scout Ship Vex 7. We have critical intelligence about human weapons capabilities. Requesting immediate docking with the command vessel, the deception worked. The Zephyrians were desperate for information about why their shields were failing against primitive weapons. They granted docking permission without running the detailed security scans. They would normally use Dot as Tracy's ship attached to the command vessel. She activated the antimatter device. The timer showed 5 minutes. That was how long they had to get the device as close to the ship's reactor core as possible. "Move out," Tracy ordered. Her crew grabbed their weapons and the device, then forced their way into the Zephyrian ship through the docking tube. The alien crew was not expecting a boarding action, and they were not prepared for humans who fought with weapons that worked without electricity. The firefight through the ship's corridors was brief but intense. The Zephyrians had energy weapons that could kill with a single shot, but they had trouble hitting humans who moved unpredictably and used cover effectively. The human weapons were simple projectile guns, but they were reliable and deadly. Tracy's team reached the reactor core. With 30 seconds to spare, she placed the antimatter device next to the massive power plant and activated the final sequence. The countdown showed 15 seconds. "It has been an honor serving with you," she told her crew. They had all volunteered for this mission knowing they would not survive it. But they also knew that their sacrifice would send a message to the entire galaxy. The antimatter device detonated exactly on schedule. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface as a new star appeared in the night sky. The Zephyrian command ship, along with 50 other vessels in the immediate area, simply ceased to exist. The surviving ships of the alien fleet found themselves without leadership, without coordination, and under attack from a planet that seemed to have turned warfare into an art form. The humans were not just fighting to win territory or to negotiate surrender. They were fighting to completely destroy their enemies. Admiral Korthvel's second-in-command took control of the remaining fleet, but it was too late. Human artillery continued to fire from the planet's surface, and now other weapons were joining the battle. Chemical rockets that released poison gas into the alien ships. Biological weapons that would make the vessels uninhabitable for years. "Sir, we need to withdraw," the tactical officer reported. "We have lost over half our fleet, and the humans show no signs of stopping their attacks." But withdrawal was not an option. The surviving Zephyrians were trapped in orbit around a planet that had become a death trap. Their ships were damaged, their supplies were running low, and the humans below were preparing even more terrible weapons. The aliens were beginning to understand that they had not invaded a normal world. They had attacked a species that had prepared for total war, and they were willing to destroy everything rather than surrender. The humans had turned their own planet into a weapon, and they were using it to teach the galaxy a lesson about the price of trying to conquer Earth. The explosion in space had been visible across half the planet. Where the Zephyrian command ship had been, there was now only expanding debris and radiation. The remaining alien fleet was in chaos. Ships collided with each other as they tried to escape the continuing artillery barrage from Earth's surface. Lieutenant Colonel Alice Turner stood on a hill overlooking the crash site of a Zephyrian transport ship. The vessel had been trying to land troops when a chemical shell had torn through its hull. Now, alien soldiers were stumbling out of the wreckage, coughing and choking from the poisonous gas that filled their ship. "Take them alive if possible," Alice ordered her team. "We need information about their homeworlds." The Zephyrians who survived the crash were nothing like the terrifying conquerors they had seemed to be in space. Without their advanced technology, they were vulnerable and confused. Their bodies were not designed for Earth's atmosphere, and many of them were already showing signs of respiratory distress. Dr. Frank Martinez had set up a field hospital in an abandoned school building. He was treating both human wounded and alien prisoners. The Zephyrians were surprisingly cooperative once they realized that humans were not going to torture or kill them immediately. "They are scared," Frank told Alice when she visited the facility. "Their species has never lost a war before. They do not understand what is happening to them." The interrogations revealed information that made the human leadership very worried. The Zephyrian Empire controlled over 400 worlds. They had millions of ships and billions of soldiers. The fleet that had attacked Earth was just a small part of their military force. "We cannot fight the entire empire," General Carl Jackson said during an emergency meeting in the underground bunker. Even if we could rebuild our technology, we would be outnumbered 1,000 to 1. The room was silent as the implications sank in. Protocol 7 had worked perfectly against the invasion fleet, but it had also left Earth completely defenseless. The planet had no satellites, no long-range communications, and no way to detect incoming threats. When the Empire sent its revenge fleet, humans would have no warning. "We need to make sure they never want to come back," Colonel Lisa Thompson said. "We need to make the cost of attacking Earth so high that they write us off as a total loss." The plan that emerged from that meeting was the most desperate gamble in human history. The captured alien technology included long-range communication devices that still worked. Using these devices, humans could send a message to the Zephyrian homeworlds. But the message would not be a plea for peace or an offer of surrender, Commander. Tracy Lewis had died in the antimatter explosion, but her sacrifice had given humanity something valuable. The blast had been so powerful that it had damaged ships throughout the enemy fleet. The Zephyrians now knew that humans possessed weapons that could destroy entire fleets in a single attack. Major Kyle Barnes was coordinating the psychological warfare campaign. Using the captured communication systems, his teams began broadcasting messages to every Zephyrian world they could reach. The messages were simple, but terrifying. "This is Earth," the broadcasts began. "You sent a fleet to conquer our world. We destroyed it. You sent a larger fleet to punish us. We destroyed that too. We are not interested in negotiating. We are not interested in surrender. We are interested in making sure that every species in the galaxy knows what happens when someone tries to end the human race." The broadcasts included detailed footage of the battle. The Zephyrians could see their advanced ships being destroyed by primitive weapons. They could see their soldiers being hunted through Earth's forests by humans using crossbows and spears. They could see the antimatter explosion that had vaporized their command fleet. But the most disturbing part of the broadcast was what came next. Humans began demonstrating weapons that they had not used in the battle. Biological weapons that could kill entire populations. Chemical weapons that would poison planets for centuries. Nuclear weapons that could crack continents. "We have been preparing for this war for 50 years, the broadcasts continued. "We have weapons that can destroy solar systems. We have ships that can carry these weapons to any world in the galaxy. And we have people who are willing to use them." The psychological impact on the Zephyrian Empire was immediate and devastating. They had built their expansion on the idea that superior technology would always defeat inferior technology. But humans had shown that technology meant nothing if you were willing to sacrifice everything to win. Captain Susan Wright was leading the final cleanup operations on Earth. The remaining Zephyrian soldiers were being hunted down systematically. Some surrendered immediately. Others tried to fight and were killed by humans who had become experts at warfare without technology. "How many are left?" she asked her field commander. "Maybe 200 scattered across the continent," Major Pete Collins replied. "They are not organized. Most of them are just trying to survive." The hunt for the remaining aliens was not just about eliminating the threat. It was about sending a message. Every Zephyrian who died on Earth was proof that humans would not stop fighting until every invader was dead. The broadcasts made sure that the Empire saw every battle, every hunt, every execution. Dr. Elena Ross was working on the next phase of humanity's defense. Her electromagnetic pulse device had been a one-time weapon, but she was already designing something much worse. A weapon that could be launched from Earth and would destroy every electronic device in an entire star system. "The Empire will try to attack us again," she told General Webb. "But next time we will be ready for them." The captured alien technology was being reverse-engineered by human scientists who worked around the clock. They were learning how to build ships that could travel between stars. They were learning how to make weapons that could destroy planets. They were learning how to fight a war across the galaxy. But the most important lesson was already being broadcast to every world in the Zephyrian Empire. Humans were not just defending their planet. They were preparing to take the war to their enemies. They were building weapons that could turn the Empire's own worlds into battlefields. The broadcasts ended with a simple message that would haunt the Zephyrian Empire for generations. We are human. We do not surrender. We do not negotiate. We do not forgive. If you attack us, we will follow you home. We will destroy your worlds. We will hunt your species until there is nothing left. This is not a threat. This is a promise. The psychological warfare campaign was working. Reports from captured Zephyrian communication networks showed that the Empire was in chaos. Some worlds were demanding immediate peace negotiations. Others were calling for total war. But all of them were afraid. The Zephyrians had learned that humans did not just prepare for war. They prepared for the complete destruction of their enemies, and they were willing to pay any price to make sure that destruction was absolute. 6 months after the first invasion, the Zephyrian Empire made its final decision. The High Council had debated for weeks while reports came in from across their territory. Worlds were in panic. Some colonies were building their own defenses. Others were trying to negotiate separate peace deals with the humans. Emperor Zethkul had ruled the Empire for 30 years. He had conquered more worlds than any leader in Zephyrian history, but he had never faced an enemy like the humans. The psychological warfare broadcasts had not stopped. Every day, new messages arrived showing what humans were preparing for the next war. We cannot allow this species to continue existing, he told his war council. They are a threat to every civilized world in the galaxy. We must destroy them completely before they develop the ability to attack our home worlds. The final fleet that assembled for the attack on Earth was the largest military force in galactic history. Over 2,000 ships, including the Empire's most powerful dreadnoughts, weapons that could crack planets, soldiers that had been trained specifically to fight humans without depending on technology, but the humans had not been idle during those 6 months. Dr. Elena Ross had completed her new weapon system. Instead of one electromagnetic pulse device, Earth now had 50 of them positioned around the solar system. Each one was more powerful than the original, and they were all connected by a network that would allow them to fire simultaneously. When their fleet arrives, we will hit them with everything at once, she explained to the Defense Council. But this time, we will not lose our own technology. Our systems are hardened against the pulse. Their systems are not. The human fleet that waited in orbit around Earth was small but deadly. Only 30 ships, but each one had been built using captured alien technology and human innovation. They were faster than Zephyrian ships, better armed, and crewed by humans who had learned that technology was only as good as the people who used it. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the flagship of the human fleet. He had survived the first invasion by learning to fight without computers. Now he had computers again, but he also had the knowledge of how to fight without them. Remember, he told his crew, we are not trying to win this battle, we are trying to end this war. Every ship we destroy sends a message to the galaxy. Every Zephyrian who dies here is proof that humans cannot be conquered. The enemy fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Emperor Zethkul had come personally to oversee the destruction of Earth. He wanted to make sure that the humans understood the price of defying the Empire. Begin the bombardment, he ordered. I want every city on that planet turned to glass. But as his ships moved into attack position, the electromagnetic pulse devices activated. The wave of energy that hit the Zephyrian fleet was 50 times more powerful than the first pulse. Every ship in the enemy formation went dark instantly. Over 2,000 vessels became floating metal coffins in the space of a few seconds. Now, Jake Morrison said into his communicator, the human fleet attacked with weapons that the Zephyrians had never seen before. Antimatter torpedoes that could destroy dreadnoughts with a single hit. Plasma beams that could cut through any armor. Missile swarms that could overwhelm any defense system, but the real surprise was what happened next. The human ships did not just attack the disabled alien fleet. They began boarding the enemy vessels. Human soldiers in powered armor stormed Through the Zephyrian ships with weapons that worked in zero gravity and complete darkness, the aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that had learned from every battle. The humans moved through the ships like they had been born in space. They knew exactly where to find the life support systems, the command centers, the weapons storage areas. Major Pete Collins led the boarding party that took the Emperor's flagship. His team had trained for this mission for months. They knew the layout of Zephyrian command ships better than some of the aliens who worked on them. "Secure the bridge," he ordered. "We need the Emperor alive." The battle for the flagship was brutal, but short. The Zephyrians fought with the desperation of a species that had never lost a war, but they were fighting in the dark against enemies who had learned to see in the shadows. Emperor Zethkul was captured alive, along with most of his command staff. They were taken to Earth's surface, where they were put on trial for war crimes. The trial was broadcast throughout the galaxy, and the evidence presented was overwhelming. The Zephyrians had destroyed 17 civilizations. They had enslaved entire species. They had turned conquest into an art form. But they had never faced the consequences of their actions until they met humans. "You are guilty of genocide," the human judge said. "You are guilty of slavery. You are guilty of war crimes that span centuries. The sentence is death." But the executions were not the end of the human response. They were just the beginning. Using the captured Zephyrian ships, human fleets began attacking Empire worlds. The tactics they used were the same ones that had worked on Earth: electromagnetic pulses to disable technology, followed by ground assaults using weapons that worked without computers. The Zephyrian Empire, which had seemed invincible for centuries, began to collapse. Worlds that had been conquered by the aliens declared independence. Species that had been enslaved rose up in rebellion. The galaxy was in chaos, but it was a chaos that gave hope to billions of enslaved beings. Dr. Frank Martinez was studying the long-term effects of the war. The psychological impact on the galaxy was profound. For the first time in history, a species had successfully resisted the Zephyrian Empire. More importantly, they had shown that technology was not the deciding factor in warfare. "We have changed the balance of power in the galaxy," he told the human leadership. "Other species are already copying our tactics. The age of easy conquest is over." The human expansion into space was careful and methodical. They did not conquer worlds like the Zephyrians had. Instead, they offered protection to species that had been enslaved. They shared technology with worlds that wanted to defend themselves. They built alliances instead of empires, but they also made sure that the galaxy remembered the lesson of Earth. Humans built memorial stations at the sites of major battles. They established museums that showed what happened when someone tried to destroy the human race. They made sure that every species knew the price of threatening humanity. The Zephyrian Empire was eventually broken up into smaller, democratic governments. The surviving aliens were given the choice of joining the new galactic alliance or living in isolation. Most chose to join, but they were never allowed to forget what their empire had done. Years later, when new threats emerged from the distant parts of the galaxy, they found a universe that was prepared for them. The lesson of Earth had spread to hundreds of worlds. Species that had once been easy targets had learned to fight with the desperation of the cornered. They had learned to prepare not just for war, but for the end of everything. The final message that humanity sent to the galaxy was simple but clear. "We are human. We do not start wars, but we finish them. We do not seek conquest, but we will defend ourselves. We do not threaten others, but we remember those who threaten us." The galaxy is big enough for all of us, but not big enough to hide from us. The human homeworld became a symbol throughout the galaxy. Earth was the planet that had refused to surrender. It was the world that had sacrificed its own civilization to destroy its enemies. It was the place where a species had chosen extinction over slavery, but Earth also became something else. It became the center of a new kind of civilization, one that was built on the idea that freedom was worth any price, one that believed that species should work together instead of conquering each other, one that understood that the strongest Defense was not weapons or technology, but the will to use them. The humans never forgot the lessons they had learned during the invasion. Every generation was taught about Protocol 7. Every child learned about the price of freedom. Every adult understood that humanity's survival depended on their willingness to fight for it. Schools taught students how to fight without technology. Military academies trained officers to command without computers. Scientists worked on weapons that would function even after civilization collapsed. The human race had learned that preparation for the worst case was the only way to ensure survival. New colonies were established with the same principles. Each world had its own version of Protocol 7. Each settlement was prepared to sacrifice everything rather than surrender to conquerors. The human empire, if it could be called that, was built on the idea that every world was worth defending and every person was worth saving. The galaxy had learned that humans were different from other species. They did not seek easy victories or quick conquests. They planned for wars that might last generations. They prepared for enemies that did not yet exist. They built weapons for battles that might never be fought. But most importantly, they had shown that any species could resist conquest if they were willing to pay the price. The human example had spread to hundreds of worlds. The age of easy empire building was over. The galaxy had entered a new era where freedom was valued more than comfort and independence was worth more than safety. The Zephyrian Empire became a cautionary tale that was told on every world. It was the story of what happened